You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is a very special episode from a new series that we're calling From a Certain Point of View. So, as some of you guys may know, we are currently celebrating our 10th anniversary of being on the air. That's kind of crazy to believe, but yeah, the Cantina Cast has actually been on the air for 10 years this year, and to celebrate, we're kind of doing a special event. We figured, hey, you guys have listened to all of these hosts over the years. Why not listen to some of your own folks, right? The supporters. And so what we're looking to do is bring on some of our longer tenured supporters, our followers, get their take, and they get to bring the show topic and have us discuss it with them. So hopefully you guys are going to enjoy this. And before we get into that, let me bring on someone that you guys all know and love. He's here with us every week. And that's Mr. Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the premiere episode of From a Certain Point of View.
Thank you. This is super exciting. I can't believe we get to do this. This has been a dream. I didn't know that I had this dream, but I have it now. And this is fantastic. No, this is super exciting, being able to interact with people. And we've met a number of these folks over at that Star Wars Celebration in Chicago, and interact with them every day on Discord or social media or whatnot. And it's fantastic to be able to actually get their point of view across. Wow, that was really not a pun intended.
Oh, I see what you did there.
I'm stealing all your thunder, man. All the dad humor is usually your gig. So
yeah.
But no, super excited we can start to do this, and we've got a great topic to kick it off with too.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, so making his debut here on the Cantina Cast is someone who's very active in our Discord community. He follows all of our social media web pages, and we had the pleasure of meeting him in person several times, actually, just a few years ago at Star Wars Celebration. So please welcome to the show. It is an honor to welcome Mr. Jeff Engelhardt.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. It's great to be here.
Hey, thanks for being there. This is kind of like a Zoom meeting, but it's way more exciting because you get to talk about Star Wars and all that good stuff. But so let's jump into this. So you had this question. You posed this question: is the dark side stronger? And I know in some of these episodes we probably touch on this. Maybe not indirectly. A lot of times it's indirectly as opposed to directly. But I want to throw the first question out to you, and let's kind of get the conversation started here. The dark side, the light side, the battle, that power dynamic between good versus evil. It's all kind of at the core of Star Wars and where we get a lot of the conflict from Star Wars. But what's your take with dark side versus light side, the power dynamics, and just, I mean, really, the dark side feels like a lot of people find this super appealing. There's a lot of people that love the dark side. I'm not a big fan of the dark side, but there's something really cool about it that I hope we'll kind of tease out here in a little bit. But what's your take on that power dynamic?
Yeah, I think it's tricky because they do always present it in the story as the one with the upper hand. And I think when you kind of look surface level, it's easy to see that it can be the stronger side a lot of times. And I think it's intentionally framed that way. When you talk about the power structures within Star Wars, everything that the dark side is associated with is always a little more overwhelming, bigger, badder, stronger. Whether it's the Empire versus the Rebels or even the Sith versus the Jedi, everything on the dark tends to look stronger. It's almost an illusion of sorts. And I think it's always been pretty intentional from a storytelling perspective. But that's not where the strength really lies at the end of these stories. So it's always been an interesting sort of concept, the way they've framed it over the years.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. It's super grandiose too, right? And you were talking about storytelling, and that's what makes it so exciting. There's got to be something threatening and menacing that you have to overcome. And it's just more interesting, right?
Right.
But it's easy to see why people believe, though, that it's stronger because, and Yoda says it too, it's faster, it's more seductive and those types of, type of verbiage. And it's still, what I'm curious about, Jeff, is like when you take things like that and you try to break them apart, why is the seductive, why does that matter so much whenever you're talking about strength, of one side versus the other? Like, how does that actually go into it, like the quickness of it.
Yeah, I think that's what it's rooted in, right? Is this idea of greed and possession. And when you get to that point, you can never have enough. Even when you have it all, you still need more. And so that goes maybe later into more of the corrupting power of all that. But when you talk just about the structure, I think when you sort of view the Force, the Sith would see it as an ocean, right? And they want it all. They want the ocean. And the Jedi are out there putting up the safety buoys, and they're only going to swim so far because it's too dangerous if you go too far out, things like that. So it's harder to see, but there's a strength in that discipline that they have. That's longer term. That's more about the greater good, strengthening those around them, and in turn, that leads to a stronger side of the Force than the Sith. Which like I said, if they see an ocean, they want the whole ocean.
Yeah, they're jumping in feet first, under submerging, taking it all in as much as they can, right?
Yeah, and Albert, I think some of that is you're able to draw on that raw energy.
Yeah.
So you might feel bigger than you really are because you're able to do these things. But I'm curious if a lot of that is sustainable in a lot of ways to where, and we're going to talk a bit about corruption and things like that, like Jeff was saying, but how much can you sustain of that? It seems exhausting to be able to pull that in, especially if you're just exploring the dark side. But right. I can see why you get this exhilaration, this full of adrenaline and everything else you got.
Yeah, and so let's touch on that just a little bit here, because I want to talk about maybe some very real examples that we see in Star Wars where people touch the dark side and suddenly get that quicker, more seductive power, that little zap of energy that they feel, and it becomes very, you grow an obsession to it, right? You want more, you start craving that because it's such a quicker path. But if you think about Anakin Skywalker, there was several moments in the prequel trilogy where, especially when he was with Count Dooku, right? Fighting Count Dooku, he was really kind of tapping into a lot of that. It made him more powerful, which ultimately ended in, the beheading of Dooku. We've talked about Kenobi as being somebody who touched that dark side. If you look at where he was when he was fighting Darth Maul with Qui-Gon Jinn, right? Arguably, those two guys are lock, sync, step. And they're putting their best out there, and he's getting hammered by Maul. Maul's kicking around, throwing him. And it's only after he loses Qui-Gon Jinn that he gets really angry, and you can see it visually on his face that he taps into that dark side. Again, theory on our part, really, but he taps into that, and ultimately that's kind of what leads him into this next level, and he's able to finally take out Darth Maul. And then Luke, right? That's probably the more probably the more prevalent example where we see it, because he's conflicted and he's struggling with all of that at the very end of Return of the Jedi, not taking that final step and fully crossing over to the dark side, because that's exactly what the Emperor wants and that sort of thing. But all of those examples were things where they tapped into the power and were able to, heighten their game just from the dark side alone. But what are some of the other examples, Jeff, for you that you can think about, and just maybe not so much of the examples, but some of the more innate characteristics and abilities that come from tapping into the dark side that we've seen either in canon, or we can even go into Legends if you got some examples there.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of what you're talking about is moments where it is fueled by rage or anger or even greed at times, right? So when something's right in front of your face and there's something there for the taking, in the Kenobi example you gave, where obviously he's angry because he just watched his master die, and Darth Maul's right in front of him. So he has he can kill him right there. And that's something, like you mentioned, where that is tapping more into that dark side emotion, because it's right there for the taking. You see it in the sequel trilogy too, where whether it was sort of on Octo, where Rey starts going to the dark side right away because it's right there, and she's exploring this for the first time. It's in her face. Luke tries to kind of stop her, but it's right there.
Yeah.
Or the way she reacts when she thinks she's about to lose Chewbacca, right? And then you see that kind of just raw anger represented through lightning, right? I mean, a lot of these Force abilities are more just a reflection of how the Force user themselves are feeling in that moment. So I think all of it just comes down to really, do you have the discipline or the strength to not take the thing that's right in front of you?
Yeah.
And that's where all those moments kind of line up. Even Luke in Return of the Jedi, right? I mean, he had he had a chance to put away Vader, which is kind of what the whole mission for those 3 movies was, and it was right there, and he almost did it until he slowed down again.
Right.
Right. But and I think Luke is another great example in Jedi, because there's always been a bit of a debate at the beginning when he's in Jabba's palace, right? We've seen Vader use force chokes, and of course we saw a lot of that in the prequel trilogy as well. But then we see Luke do it, right? And all of a sudden we've got this idea. I mean, he's wearing all black. Is he using is a force choke a dark side ability, right? And because we really only see light side users use it when they're angry, when they are pressing an advantage or they're desperate, like you were saying. And so it's always been interesting to see when the characters flirt with those. But Luke seems like he's very in control, to your point. And he doesn't seem like he's just kind of chilling and, waving his fingers and whatnot. So how do you, when you look at something like that, is a force choke an innate dark side ability, or are you cool with anybody using it?
This could be a little more untraditional, I guess, but the way I've always viewed the Force, I know some people sort of like to take abilities and separate them into boxes, right? This one goes to the good side, this one goes to the dark side. I've always viewed it as everything is open to everybody, right? I mean, if you can tap into the Force, you can tap into the Force. So it's all there for you, and it's what you're feeling in those moments, the control or lack thereof you have over what you're feeling, and then that gets represented through these abilities we see, right? The more focused or contemplative you are, we see that a lot with the Jedi, or the more, if you're acting out of anger, it doesn't matter if you're, like I said, like Rey, and you can, shoot lightning, because it's just sort of a symbol of how she's feeling. So I've always viewed it that the abilities aren't really exclusive to anybody. It's more about a representation of how the person's actually feeling in that moment.
Right. And Albert, since you touched on Legends and you brought it up,
yeah,
Force light. I mean, if we're going to talk Force abilities, we got to talk about Force lightning, right?
Yeah.
In the Legends, we got to see users not necessarily for dark side tactics, though. I think we saw Luke. I can't remember one of the books, but he had to use lightning on a control panel or something like that. But it aged him considerably. He took basically damage, if you're into RPs, I guess, that type of thing. So with Force lightning, it's only considered with the dark side. And it seems to be perhaps the most powerful Force ability that we've seen from a destructive standpoint.
Yeah, I would agree.
How do you kind of take that?
Yeah, no, I would agree 100%. Like for now, I mean, there's probably one more ability that I'll touch on just briefly, and I'll pull in some Legends for that one as well, that I think is probably more powerful, and it's kind of at the it's kind of the underlining MacGuffin for a lot of what we see in Star Wars, the original trilogies, or all 3 of the trilogies, really. But to answer your question, yeah, Force lightning is certainly powerful. There was actually one of the characters in Legends had there was different colors. You remember that somebody had red Force lightning that they could use as well. And so there was different levels of it, of manifestations of it. You think about other powers that the dark side users had, especially when we get to Legends. You've got Darth Nihilus and his ability just to level planets, entire planets at one point, at one time.
OP.
It's a little overpowered, absolutely. But I think, and there's plenty other examples, but the one I think that seems to be a concurrent theme, or something that's, it's in the canon movies, books, novels, everything, and it's also in Legends, and that's just life immortal, right? The immortality and the pursuit of immortality. You had people like Darth Plagueis. You've got obviously Sidious, who we know was actually able to do it to some extent. And we have who's it? Tenebrae. Darth Sion was another one from Legends. And then you've got with Tenebrae, he was Valkorian, right? So this is all again going back to Legend stuff, Old Republic, but he was actually successful as well. He was able to take his body and possess another person and live for a number of years, and had offspring. He had 2 boys and a girl, and that whole family was really screwed in the head. But I mean, I think that's kind of what they're going for, right? There's always this question about, why does the dark side want to rule the galaxy? What are they going to do once they get the galaxy? And it's really, I think it's more than that. I think it's having the ultimate power and using the dark side to rule the galaxy. But I think the ultimate prize, the finish line for a lot of these guys is, and probably always will be, immortality in some way.
And freedom,
I agree with that 100%.
Right? Yeah, freedom from breaking the bonds of chains. It's part of the Sith code, effectively, right?
Yeah, through my victory, my chains are broken. Right, the last line of the Sith code says exactly that, and that's kind of what the chains of mortal life, the chains of being immortal, I think, is You could even take it from that perspective.
Right.
And so let's move into the. I mean, there's certain things I think, Jeff, that are probably very specific to dark side users, and you can talk about all these things. Everything from the red lightsabers, which we've gotten explanations for and why they're red and that kind of thing. But you think about like the Death Star and some of these other super weapons that have existed over time. But it seems like they always have like the best weaponry or the best gadgetry than like the Jedi or even the good guys. I mean, the Mandalorians are probably a good second place, but I wouldn't always put the Jedi, and that's probably because of their background, maybe, or their humbleness. And, for over the years, they really haven't been, they rely a lot more on the Force and their natural abilities and compassion and all those good values rather than a big freaking laser that can blow up a planet or ships with, planet destroying weaponry. But what is it? Any thoughts as to why, or examples as to where, I guess, the dark side users have in the advantage in technology and weaponry? And why does it seem like they're the old? Is it because they rule the galaxy and they got just the funds, or what?
Yeah, I think I do think it's sort of, it goes back to that core mission, like you were sort of saying. Jedi view things to where they're defenders, right? They're literally defenders of peace or justice. So they're always thinking about protecting and defense, which is a lot different than conquest, right? So the dark side's always focused on conquest. So their energy, their focus, their ingenuity even is all directed toward how do we submit, our enemies, how do we defeat them, make them submit, things like that. So their weapons, I think, are a reflection of that mindset and shows that. And it does go back to always needing more, right? I mean, I know the second Death Star thing in Return of the Jedi was always a bit of a funny thing, like, oh, they blew one up, there's the second one. But I think it's also a good commentary on what the Sith really believe, right? They had a Death Star, and they're so single-minded in their approach to things that their solution is, all right, let's do it bigger and better, right? They need more. They just need, and that's their solution to, oh, we lost this once before. Instead of being contemplative or reflecting, that's not really what they do. They go out and they make more weapons, bigger weapons, until they're successful in whatever conquest they're doing at the time. So I kind of always like that idea of the second Death Star. Oh no, that was kind of. It was almost like it was the epitome of where they were going, right? It was like they don't have one. I mean, there's also, I don't know if it's ever been canonized, but the idea that they've had several of these things in plans, right? It wasn't just we're going to build one and done. It was, no, we've got one that we built, we've been working on for years. It was okay. We're going to make another one and several more like it that are going to be much larger, much more powerful. I mean, there was no end to the greed in what Palpatine was trying to accomplish here. We just, they squashed it before it got any further than that.
Right. I think real quick though, on the toys, we're going to see, but we're seeing a shift with the High Republic though, right?
Yeah.
We see the Jedi's got some pretty cool toys now, and they're very cognizant. But I think to your point, Jeff, they are very universal. They have a more well-rounded approach. They have, more passengers. They're not rooted in aggression, right? Or just the need to dominate and get someone to submit. And the Jedi, they're going to be resourceful and more, some of them more in tune with nature and things like that. But I think go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to just follow up on your point really quick, that even in their designs of the weapons, especially in the High Republic, how, you can't just shoot your blasters out of your plane or out of your starship. You need to put in your lightsaber and really make a conscious decision. Like, are you sure you want to do this? So,
right.
Yeah.
You come back to the root of everything. And I think it works with the vehicles too, as well as just their mentality. And both sides have this common. It all goes back to fear, right? And the Jedi are trying to rise above fear. And actually, I think they fear fear, whereas the Sith want to instill fear, and they draw on that raw emotion in order to channel more of it. And the Jedi are always kind of in internal conflict with themselves and inside of themselves, which I think inherently makes them a little bit weaker in that regard, because they just have this doubt that surrounds them. And I'm not saying that's where I would push my vote, which side's stronger, but I think when I think about that, the Jedi, unless you're really, clearly focused in mind, and maybe ever Chris, we're going to have to see where she goes with this, because she's the purest example that we have as a Jedi right now. So what is it? Do all of them struggle with conflict and fear? Or is that the one thing that keeps limiting the Jedi from being truly great, is embracing that a little bit more than what we've seen traditionally and throughout the Star Wars canon?
Yeah, you make a good point, because Avar Kriss is certainly somebody on my radar. It should be on everybody's radar to kind of see, what is the protege, or what is the example of a Jedi supposed to be, before we get into the Luke Skywalkers. And I'm not taking anything away from Luke Skywalker, because I think if we're just speaking loudly here, you've got Avar Kriss, who is one of the most powerful Jedi we've ever seen in canon. You've got somebody like Luke Skywalker. We finally got to, we got to see it in The Last Jedi. I'm not saying we didn't, but we got to see all the glitz and glam, right? All the showmanship in The Mandalorian, right? And so there's a level of power that comes there that we've never seen before, at least in canon. But then there was another character too. Do you remember Kirik and Phila? The guy that Vader fought? He was in issue 3 of the Vader comic. He was the one that had taken the vow of I can't remember what the name was.
Basically celibacy of sorts.
Yeah, like he was dedicated himself solely to the Force, and his whole lot in life was to train Jedi, and that's what he was. He was a master weapon artist or weapon master, and so Vader goes out to find him. Right, he's trying to kill all these Jedi, and he gets out there, and you're thinking, okay, this is Anakin, who's he lost some arms and legs, but beyond that, he was now Darth Vader. He had the suit. There was confirmation in the comic that his abilities were enhanced. Maybe not all of them, but some of them were enhanced now because of the suit. And so he was going in there like Billy Bad, and thinking he was just going to roll over on Kirik and Phila. And that was actually the opposite. This guy leveled him. It took his leg off. I mean, and he was confident. He like exemplified just how powerful raw power. He didn't even have like armor on. He had no shirt on. He was fighting him shirtless, like in a wife beater almost. Right. And so somebody like that, Vader was able to overcome, but he almost did it like something like the dark side, where he was able to take advantage of their weakness, as opposed to not the physical weakness, but he had to take advantage of the other weakness in flooding the dam and the villagers and everything in order to kill him. But I think there are good examples in canon, and even in Legends, there's tons of them. But in canon, there are now some pretty good examples of where we see just how powerful, like raw power, raw force power, a light side user can be. And we've had so many examples of the dark side that, maybe it does come down to, like you said, fear, or whoever has the bigger stick that ultimately can kind of turn the tide on that. So, yeah. Joe, go, Jeff.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's a really good point. That's that kind of power, again, that where the Sith, just frankly do have the upper hand, right? It's in that moment of when you're talking about a one-on-one battle, and if their mission is to go out and kill, they just have that sort of unhinged power that you don't often see matched by the Jedi. That example from the comic is great. I love that arc too. But the fear, I think, is what they really focus on the most, like you were mentioning in these new stories. And the amount of times they talk about it, it's true that the Jedi almost fear. And I think that is a double-edged sword for them. It's what makes them maybe weaker in these kinds of moments that we're talking about, but it also works as a check and balance to make sure that they maintain the discipline that gives them kind of that strength in the long run that the Sith generally fail to have.
Yep. Right. So, maybe we'll kind of end on this last quick bullet here. For all of the power and all of the glory that comes with the dark side, there seems to be, we find many of our dark side characters in Star Wars bearing these heavy tolls, whether they're physical in nature, whether they're emotional in nature, mental in nature. They've got fractured or even severed relationships. They've got severed arm or limbs as well. But they take a considerable amount. They take quite a bit for embracing the dark side and grabbing hold of the power that is addictive and that's quick and seductive. And so Jeff, for you, when you think about some of the characters, again, either Legends or in canon, what are some of those characteristics that you see with some of these dark side characters that whether it's physically or emotionally or mentally, that come to mind for you?
Yeah, I think it's it's probably the most obvious one, but it's also probably the best example is Palpatine in Revenge of the Sith, right? You see that in order to use this power, and the more you embrace it, it literally eats away at you, at the person that's using it. And so you see that in the physical sort of deterioration just very, very quickly with Palpatine. And they kind of play on the same idea with Vader. I mean, it's the whole the dark side makes you more machine than man, and they kind of make that a little more literal with Vader. But it is interesting how they frame that as sort of its own prison, right? The more you embrace this dark side, the more it kind of controls them and corrupts them to a point where eventually they're weakened in their own abilities and get these blind spots that we see that ultimately lead to their downfall.
Yeah,
right.
Jonesy, I was going to say, and you can maybe pick up on this as well, but like the dark eyes, we had Rey as an example in The Rise of Skywalker when she saw her dark side image of herself as well. But there are a lot of other things that kind of go into that you pay the price of, right, with the dark side.
Yeah, I mean, especially the psychological aspect. And I think why we see dark side people lose so often is Palpatine is such a rarity, where he is totally committed to everything that he believes, and he will do everything to pursue it. And that's the only goal. He knows his goal, and he is completely committed to it. The issues that he keeps running into are with people like Anakin or even Rey or anybody that takes the quick and easy path. Or Ben Solo, sorry, not Rey, but Ben Solo,
yeah,
and Kylo, is that they're not committed to it. They have this life of conflict, and they're always going to lose because they're always going to want to lose in some way. There's always some reason that they want to get pulled back, and they're just suppressing it, and they're pushing it down because they're afraid of what that means. They're afraid that it's a weakness, and that they're afraid that someone else will exploit it if they don't do it. Because like Anakin always felt wronged. He always felt, shaded because he's not on the council, but he can sit there with them, right? And he break bread with them. But so it's just one of those things of where they've got to, if they don't commit, you will lose. Now, Palpatine lost anyway, but part of that's because you're usually fairly alone as well. And I think that was the point of Rise of Skywalker, right? Or maybe the sequel trilogy. Well, I guess even in the original trilogy, George Lucas's idea is that the whole community has to come together in order to win, right? And there are more of us than there are of you. And that more holistic perspective is what will always overwhelm the power of two or the power of the few who want to just, sow destruction on the galaxy.
Yeah, it takes an order to raise a child, and it takes a galaxy to destroy a villain.
Right.
I don't know where that came from, but no, that's essentially what's happened with the Anakin there. Yeah, and there's, I was just thinking also as you were talking there, Jonesy, there was a character named Darth Doctis, and this is not Legends. This is actually canon, and this takes place prior to the High Republic. But she was obsessed with the ultimate power of immortality, and I think I may have talked about this in the show, so I apologize, and hopefully this is the first time you've heard it. But she's so obsessed with the power of immortality that it finally, her teachings and her all of her lessons eventually take her to Exegol. And when she gets out to Exegol, she finds this creature that's kind of like a lackey, a hunchback of Notre Dame kind of character, and he ends up taking her down into the middle of the Exegol, and there's a laboratory where all these other Sith have come in the past, and she's super excited. She's completely just drunk on this idea that she's finally found the Holy Grail and everything that she's going to need in order to find immortality. And it ends almost like almost sounds like a Twilight Zone episode, or like getting a wish from a genie, and it's never really what you thought it was going to be. At the very end, she ends up drinking this potion that she's concocted after all of the the books are laid out, the textbooks, ancient Jedi texts, whatever she's reading, and she drinks the potion, and then she wakes up, and now she's a disfigured member as well. And the moral of the story really is, be careful what you wish for, and be careful what you're seeking. And it seems like that is something that is completely lost on the Sith. However, seems pretty available for the Jedi, and maybe that's kind of will lead right into this last topic here around the Jedi, for everything we've talked about as kind of having playing second fiddle to some of the stuff that the Sith have. They seem to always win, right? They're always the good guys. They always prevail. And there's probably a lot of reasons why. Some of them probably are more physical than spiritual or that sort of thing. But Jeff, when you think about our Star Wars canon and legends, what is it ultimately? I mean, is this the lesson that we're supposed to take away? Is that as much as cool as the dark side is, the dark side, not to quote Spaceballs, but the dark side sucks. And is it going to, I think they said the light side, but I'm just playing on that. But yeah, what is it about the light side that ultimately prevails? What is the one X factor that the dark side characters just can't seem to grasp to kind of put them in over the edge?
I think Jonesy actually touched on it pretty perfectly a little while ago when he was saying that this concept of, it's the few against the many. Really, that's where the light side gets its strength from, I think, and what makes it better than the dark side at the end of the day, or stronger, is that there's just simply more of them. And I think the great part about Star Wars is you do see these moments where the Sith are using these awe-inspiring powers, and they overpower the Jedi a lot with Force abilities and things like that. But in these pivotal moments when everything's on the line, it really, their Force powers, don't even come into play a lot of times with the Jedi, where, in Return of the Jedi, all it takes is Luke literally throwing his weapon away. No Force trick. It's just appealing to his, like to a father's love. And that's enough to be, the most powerful dark side user in the galaxy. And in The Rise of Skywalker, kind of the same thing with Rey. You see she's tired, she looks defeated, and what it's really about is, she's surrounded by people who believe in her, and she believes in herself. It's a self-belief. It's people believing in her that props her back up. And then she just finds the strength to walk forward. And that's really all it is the courage to walk forward. And she's able to beat this, again, incredibly powerful dark side user.
Yeah.
So I just like that it boils down to these very human attributes that generally talk about how having connections with each other, supporting each other, is generally enough to beat the most powerful dark side user.
Right. And I think if I were to boil down some of that too, and I think this is maybe operating around what you were saying, Jeff, arrogance, right? So there's so much arrogance with dark side users. They think they've got everything figured out. They think they know everything because they are so committed. They've thought everything is proceeding as I've foreseen, right? And Luke called Palpatine out on it. His overconfidence will be his undoing. And it's just it's so true, because whenever you think you are so much better than everybody else, that's when your blind spots start to broaden, and you piss people off enough that they're going to rally, and you are going to get a lot of resistance against you. And that's when you will be overwhelmed, because you thought you planned for every contingency, but you as a dark side user planned on one thing in particular, that you had broken their will and their spirit to where they would fracture. But instead, what you've done is you've found a way for them all to come together in order to make that possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's and I'll kind of, maybe I'll just leave you guys with this. If you think about it, everything you guys have said is absolutely 100% true. In the idea that the Jedi are just, there's more good people or more people willing to come together in order to take down the Jedi is absolutely true. If we go back to Legends, there was a moment, right, when the Sith had their numbers, and they had lots of Sith. And things, arguably were in flux. They're probably, the ebb and flow of light side versus dark side was perpetual. At any given time, one side or the other had the upper hand. We didn't have these long bouts, maybe like we have in the more recent timelines. But that didn't work out for them, right? Once that last war happened and all the Sith, but a very few remained, it's Bane who came up with this idea of, hey, let's go to the rule of two. Now, he didn't do that for any other reason than pure greed, right? He realized and acknowledged that the Sith were constantly trying to kill each other. They were so greedy in their quest for power and for domination that they were killing themselves internally while they were also trying to fight and take on the Jedi. And so he said, well, let's just pull this back. I'm going to go to rule of two. That way I don't have to worry about 2, maybe 3, 4 at most. But even that was kind of crazy, right? Because then you're always kind of trying to kill your apprentice. Your apprentice is always trying to kill you, that kind of thing. But that was ultimately, that rule of two is another piece that probably did them in, right? Because they didn't have the numbers, and they've been, even now, at the end of Rise of Skywalker, maybe things will change. Maybe we'll go back to the days of having these really big grand armies of Sith versus Jedi all over again. But they kind of did that to themselves for a very long time and put themselves in that position where they just didn't have the numbers. So maybe that's why they had to rely on star destroyers and tech that could destroy mass amounts of people, because they didn't have the numbers really, to do it. Palpatine did it, but he was all about manipulation, right? He built his own army in lieu of having a bunch of Sith behind him, and it was just kind of a numbers game for him. But he's the exception, like we've talked about here.
Okay, so I think we got to address the elephant in the room before we get out of here. Jeff, is the dark side more powerful?
I'm going to have to go with no on this one.
Okay. And quick reasoning why? Is it a brief summary?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to be so, nonchalant about it. Obviously, the dark side is very powerful. And in these moments, it can overwhelm Jedi. But it is about sort of the long term and what will always, win out at the end of the day. And I think that we just see that time and again, that because the light side connects people and it's people working together because of this shared mission, while the dark side requires this just aggressive selfishness and consolidation of everything around them. They need to consume everything, that it's always doomed to fail. And, as George Lucas really boils it down to, that is, the dark side really is a cautionary tale about greed and possession at the end of the day. So it'll never be strong enough to take down those ideals that make us better,
Yeah,
so.
Make us the good people. What about you, Jonesy? Is it better, stronger? Which one's stronger for you?
Neither. The Force is the Force.
Oh,
of course.
All right.
Right. I mean, it's the Force. And they did this. This is one of the things The Last Jedi did well. And we've seen this in it's a circle, right? It's circular. Now I'm like Happy Gilmore all of a sudden with Kevin Nealon's character. But no, it's a cycle, right? Everything gives way to give something else. And I think to your point, Albert, this perpetual shift in things, right? Powerful dark, powerful light. We're always going to have these dynamics in nature and with people and everything else. And so it's going to go back and forth. If we're talking about individual abilities and stuff, there's so many question marks as to who's doing it and whatnot. But then you start to say, I tend to agree, the light in people will usually prevail. Like if you look at the grand scheme of things, that's probably a bit more balanced. And that's because, like you were saying, there are periods where the Sith were in great numbers. They were in powerful control. The Empire was under a lot of control for a while. We've seen the High Republic. They seem to be in very control and not a lot of dark side, but it goes back and forth. We don't know how long this has all been, but I think it's the light inside of people that drives more of that than the Force itself. The Force is just a pool, right? That you can pull on and you can use it in any way. And we're kind of seeing this with Elzar Mann. If you can use it, you should use it. And you could take that a step further. You should use it however you want, or you can use it however you want. And that's what makes things right or wrong, is what you do with it.
Yeah. And so I'll end on this, I promise this time. I think you guys are both saying the same thing. At the end of the day, you can make an argument that the light side is stronger because once you pull back, like you said, once you pull back the dark, once you pull back the light, and you're just talking about the Force, the X factor that exists there is friendship. It's love. It's family. It's selflessness, right? All these characteristics that are not attainable by the Sith. So naturally, right, logically, anybody who follows a light is more apt to have those characteristics, be able to, channel those emotions and those feelings and those characteristics and traits. And as long as you have that, that's ultimately what's going to kind of be able to overpower, the dark side, right? The Sith just don't have that. They don't have that. They have to rely on other things. And that's what always wins every time. George Lucas talked about it. Carrie Fisher talked about it. What is Star Wars? It's about family. It's about friendship. It's about love, right? And then it transcends just more than Star Wars. This is a universal theme that happens in all our storytelling and some of the best and greatest storytelling as well. So
I feel a sequel. I feel a sequel coming in now, Albert. Are the Sith capable of love?
Jeez.
It was rhetorical.
Oh, okay.
It's for the sequel show.
Okay, we'll have to do a follow-up show on.
Right.
Can you love a Sith? But all right.
Can a Sith love you?
Yes, they can.
For the love of the Sith. There we go. We've already come up with the title.
Claudia Gray can write the story. Can just be like,
all right, yeah.
Albert's a fanfic pro.
I'll see. I'll get with Claudia and see if we can't put something together.
We're on a first name basis now with Ernie as well. Right.
And Ernie, we'll see if he's got something in there too. Okay, well that's going to do it for this show. And I didn't mention this up front, but these shows are meant to be a little bit shorter, simply because we don't want to tire out the guests, have to prepare too much for them. But man, this was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Jeff, thank you so much for bringing this topic to us. And and giving us your point of view. I mean, not to be corny here, but that's really what the show is about. It's really to kind of get to hear your voice, your opinions, your thoughts, your point of view on all these things that we've digested and regurgitated over the course of the last 10 years. So thank you again, sir, for being here on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun.
Cool. And Jonesy, I will see you on Sunday as we continue our Light of the Jedi Part 4, I think is what we got coming up here next.
14. I have to take my shoes off. Got to take my shoes off to count now. So yeah, we're good. Yeah. We're on hour 14. Sorry.
It's hour 14 of Light of the Jedi.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff, man. This was a lot of fun. Glad you're able to join us.
Thanks again, guys.
Yes. And thank you guys for everyone that joined us on the live show. Please like and subscribe both to the podcast and the YouTube channel, and look forward to more of these shows. We've got 2 more guests already lined up, and we're going to continue this for the foreseeable future. So it'll be an ongoing limited series of shows, and please give us feedback. Let us know what you guys think of it. So we'll see y'all on the next show.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.